Hello everyone, I guess it's pretty clear from the intro on who we'll be looking into today. That's right. You've guessed it, the one and only Mr. Bean. I'm sure that every one of us has either heard or watched Mr. Bean while growing up as a kid, as his character and skits are very iconic. So in this video, we'll take a dive into the biological side of Mr. Bean's personality. Here we go. Would you believe that this show has only one season? Feels like this show never really ended. Well, fun fact, there are only 15 episodes. As the title of the show suggests, Mr. Bean is the main protagonist, who is also a dim-witted, occasionally brilliant, egotistical, and generally lovable fool who engages in a variety of bizarre plots and conspiracies in everyday tasks. Mr. Bean lives by himself in his apartment in England, with his best friend Teddy and his ever-iconic little green car. Mr. Bean's most distinct feature is that he rarely speaks, and when he does, it's simply a few mumbled words in a ridiculously low-pitched voice. Besides that, in the first episode, he was also shown to have a great understanding of trigonometry, oddly enough. And lest we forget, he has a girlfriend named Irma. His impulsivity frequently leads him to come up with ridiculous and illogical solutions to his own issues. Bean is often perplexed by the world, unsure of what is going on. He is often depicted to be a clueless fellow who can't seem to get the fundamental components of how the world works. And the show regularly portrays his efforts and complex solutions to what would typically be considered straightforward chores, such as going swimming, redecorating, or even attending church. If I were to ask you guys to close your eyes and picture Mr. Bean, I know that you will imagine his very iconic brown jacket with the elbow patches, his white-colored shirt and red tie, and his brown trousers, because that is what he would wear in almost every single episode. There were a few times that he appeared in other outfits, such as this one where he wears a gray suit and red tie, or this episode when he wore a dark green overcoat with light green shirt and dark green tie. Oh, and the time where he went to the cinema in a brown sweater. So what makes Mr. Bean's personality stand out? Well, for a main character, he is pretty foolish. He is usually obnoxious, competitive, and appears to be immature. He never really speaks clearly and only mutters a few words.
Excuse me, I'm looking for my wallet.
He can be a gentleman towards other women at times. But sadly though, he doesn't show much affection nor concern for his partner, like he despises Irma kissing him. He does, however, get jealous when other men are trying to be close with his girlfriend. Besides that, he regards Teddy as his best friend and talks to Teddy most of the time. Bean acts as though his Teddy is real, but funnily enough, Teddy is not always treated well like a living being. Mr. Bean always acts on his impulsivity, and he does not like people taking his things, as he is very selfish. Now, let's get on to the fun part, the theory section. So in 1970, Jeffrey Gray proposed his biophysiological theory of personality, called the reinforcement sensitivity theory. This theory suggests that there are two behavioral systems, the behavioral activation system BAS and the behavioral inhibition system BIS. BAS is the one responsive to incentives such as cues for reward, and regulates the approach behavior. When BAS recognizes a stimulus as potentially rewarding, it triggers the approach behavior. For example, as a child, you might have picked up the specific melody that the ice cream truck plays when it arrives in your neighborhood. When you hear that song, it is a cue of reward, so your BAS creates the urge for you to run out into the street to find the ice cream truck. Your action of going to the ice cream truck is the approach motivation. On the other hand, you've got your BIS, which is responsive to cues for punishment, frustration, and uncertainty. The effect of BIS activation is to seize or inhibit behavior, bringing out the avoidance behavior. Previously, you may have been scolded or punished by your mother for running into the street. The street then becomes a punishment cue to your BIS, which causes you to inhibit or stop your behavior. Basically, your BAS is like an accelerator that motivates approach behavior, whereas your BIS is like brakes that inhibit behavior to stop yourself from what you are planning to do. So what's all this BAS and BIS theory stuff has got to do with Mr. Bean? Most, or if not all, Mr. Bean's actions signify that his personality tends to be more active in his behavioral activation system, or BAS. As mentioned previously, BAS is associated with responsiveness to rewards and regulates approach behavior, which in other words, BAS is highly correlated with impulsivity. As seen in the show, Mr. Bean is very sensitive to reward and he is vulnerable to positive emotions. Remember that episode when he visited the pool? It's so obvious that the elephant slide is meant for kids and yet, he still wants to ride it. His impulsivity makes him somewhat blind to see the consequences of his own actions, just like when he climbs to the high-diving board before he realizes that it is too scary for him to jump off. According to Gray, BAS is responsible for the personality dimension of impulsivity, the inability to inhibit responses. It can be seen in his show that Merbeans tends to do impulsive things because he wants to get the reward or he has to achieve his goals. It appears that the relation between Gray's constructs and Isaac's constructs is direct, with BAS being equivalent to extraversion and BIS being equivalent to neuroticism, where the extroverted individual is more reactive to pleasant, rewarding things, while the neurotic person is more reactive to negative emotions. For example, this scene begins with Mr. Bean approaches a street musician playing on the saxophone. He wants to give some spare change to the musician but he doesn't have any. An introverted person would accept reality and leave. However, being an extrovert on the extreme side, he decides to gain some of his own spare change by dancing on the spot, so that other strangers would give it to him, which he achieves to do so. In the end, he gives the penny he obtained to the musician. He then leaves looking somewhat satisfied. We can infer that the achievement of giving the penny to the musician is its own reward to Mr. Bean. His decision to dance shows that he would not stop until he gets to do what he wants. This scene presents an amazing example to witness his impulsivity. And that basically concludes our character analysis of Mr. Bean. I hope this video was insightful to his character and how it relates to the biological domain. Thanks for watching.